Been a lot of panicked parents ever since that plant in Michigan shut down temporarily after there were concerns because some babies got sick after consuming baby formula, including 2 children who passed away.
Panic. We tend to panic. It's interesting. I see a lot of parents, will cruise past that aisle and everybody kind of looks at each other with that concerned, understanding look. You know what they're going through.
That's because baby formula is just one of the latest products in short supply right now. Ever since COVID-19 struck a couple of years ago, disrupted the entire supply chain. A longtime Iowa State professor and supply chain expert understands the concerns, especially about baby formula these days.
That is understandable because it's your baby, because it's your child. And people get obviously very emotional about their children, and you're quite literally talking about their ability to get fed and to be healthy. More generally, throughout the pandemic, we've talked to a number of different groups, a number of different folks in the media as different problems have popped up. So that's really been an ongoing thing. And I would love to be able to tell you when not just the baby formula, but also the other supply chain problems clear up. In fact, I would really love to be able to tell you when all these problems are going to end, because if I knew that, I would be making so much money as a consultant, I would be able to retire fairly soon.
Undoubtedly. For the baby formula specifically, when you have just essentially 3 American companies producing this and one shuts down because of problems, what is supposed to happen? How can the system make up for that? That capacity just doesn't exist, right? In our country, at least?
That seems to be the case. I've looked for information about capacity with regards to baby formula. And interestingly, it's a little more difficult to find those numbers than it is for other industries. But here's the thing. It's really easy to predict how much baby formula is needed in the United States, because if you know essentially how many babies there are, if you know what % of babies are being formula fed, that becomes a fairly easy sales forecast to make. And because it's difficult to steal market share from other firms, the firms themselves don't have a lot of motivation to either carry extra inventory or build extra capacity. So as soon as one facility goes down, it's going to have a big effect on the United States as a whole.
Specifically when it comes to fuel, you've seen this push and the attention on we need to make more of it in our country so we're not relying on it from places like Russia. Mm-hmm. Beyond that, maybe more broadly on this, do you think everything we've experienced over the last 2 years in our country, will we see more of this push of whether it's computer chips, oil, whatever the heck it is, that we need to do more of this production within our borders? Is that something we can assume will happen?
If the politics of it line up. You mentioned computer chips there. We know that the government has now made a big push to encourage chip making facilities to open in the United States. But if it's the case that it's still essentially less expensive to produce a product elsewhere, and the US government isn't making a push to significantly reshore that production of that product is still going to remain overseas. So for baby formula, for instance, the federal government, state governments could make a push to encourage the addition of capacity in the United States. But until they do that, there's really no reason for you as a baby formula manufacturer to increase your capacity if all that extra capacity is going to end up not being sold. That product is just going to sit on the shelf.
Is there one particular factor that you've seen beyond baby formula here on various industries? Is there one sort of common thread, one common thing that you're seeing that's popping up here? Was it just that we shut so much stuff down? We also lost a bunch of people who left the workforce. We're seeing ingredients, if you will, from other countries that got slowed up or whatever. Is there one thing, or is it just truly a combination of things here?
At the risk of equivocating, part of me says it's a little bit of both. It's very difficult to narrow this down to, say, one factor when you talk about all the supply chain issues that have occurred. The leading suspects would be the data in the United States, which shows that spending patterns have changed. The data seems to be indicating that people are buying more stuff as compared to buying services relative to what was happening before the pandemic. Okay, so that makes sense because that means that these different supply chains have to adjust to the new spending patterns. Another possible suspect is, as you mentioned, the change in labor and the numbers around how many people are quitting their job, looking for a better job, the availability of labor. So those are probably the two leading suspects. But here's the problem. It's remarkable, and this is something I think a lot of people don't understand, how one problem somewhere in the world can affect so many different supply chains. And my favorite example, possible example of this right now is the Ukraine war and petroleum. If you get a can of baby formula, there's a plastic cap on that can. Plastic comes from petroleum. The Russia-Ukraine war has roiled the petroleum markets. So there's currently no evidence that the Russia-Ukraine war is hurting baby formula's manufacturers' ability to make those plastic caps. But yet it could happen. And this is just an example of how interconnected everything is. So one thing goes wrong somewhere in the world, and it can have a real knock-on effect to a whole bunch of supply chains.
You talked about how people were buying so much more stuff. So in our country, the government was giving out so much COVID aid to people. They were getting all that money coming to them. They weren't going out to restaurants and those kind of more service type things as they did in the past. But then is there a risk here with the way the system's going to work that if we go back to something more similar to our previous patterns, we're still going out to eat in a restaurant again, so then that all has to be repackaged in the way that it's sent for restaurants instead of us as individuals for our family table, those kind of things. Like that, you get in the weeds here, but that's some of the problem, right? When it came with food, because stuff was packaged for restaurants, we weren't going to restaurants. They had to refigure all that out so it worked for us at home. Now we may be going back that way, though.
Yeah, so there's a couple issues there. The first issue is these different COVID stimulus payments that went out. I'm not an expert in economics, but from what I understand, there does seem to be an argument that encouraged people to spend. So, okay, fine, that keeps the economy going and keeps the economy hot. I think some of the folks that that study the economy would say that potentially those COVID stimulus payments have caused a bit of the inflation we're seeing now. The other issue you mentioned is, let's say that spending patterns go back to pre-pandemic spending patterns. Yeah, I agree with you. I think we will see some retooling then in terms of the products that companies are offering. The example that you mentioned is a great one. The stuff that flows towards restaurants, how it's packaged, what is offered to restaurants by suppliers is a little bit different than what is packaged and what is offered to grocery stores. How quickly that transition will take place, we don't know. A problem here for all the folks involved in those supply chains is when they're making their sales forecasts, their most recent data, the past, 2 odd years of data, is really funky, and that makes forecasting a lot more difficult.
So how much of the blame is who's ever in the White House at the time? So Joe Biden's in the White House. How much of this is his fault?
So I am not a politician. I'm a supply chain professor. My belief is that regardless of who is in the White House, there is not a dial in the Oval Office that says, make supply chains work well, make supply chains work poorly. The government, without a doubt, can have some effect on how supply chains work. But one of my frustrations with this baby milk formula issue is too many people have been pointing at the government, and the solutions that have been offered have been sort of government-based. To me, that anger, those solutions, that has been misdirected. The government does not decide how much manufacturing capacity should exist. The government does not decide how much baby formula should be made. The government does not decide where the baby formula should be distributed to. Those decisions are made by for-profit companies. And I have to say, I hope that, especially in the media, the folks who are investigating this, that they really start looking at these companies, because they are the ones that are making the decisions, not the government. And unless we make some significant changes to public policy, that's going to be how it works for the foreseeable future.
A non-political perspective about all of this. We're going to look ahead to the primary election in the Quick Six next.